Shalom, shalom, beloved brothers, sisters, and friends, and welcome to the final part of the series, The Spirit of the Word. And this part is entitled, Judging the Fruits. I want to thank you all for joining me, for those who've stuck around for 4 parts, and thank Yahuwah for giving me this privilege of sharing this word with you. I apologize for the last 3 weeks. Yahuwah's been working very mightily in my life the last 3 weeks, rearranging things, turning them around, and really showering me with blessings. And so it's my honor and privilege to bring this message to you all. This first slide is entitled, The Fruit of Whose Spirit? Galatians 5:16-26. We should all be familiar with this. I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I also told you in time past, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of Elohim. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, which is patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, which is faithfulness, gentleness, which is meekness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who are Messiahs have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. It's good to get the entire gist of this passage together, because many have misinterpreted and miscarried the message in these verses to their own folly. When Paul tells us those led by the Spirit are not under the law, and against things such as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, that there's no law against these things. He's not telling us that we do not uphold the law. In fact, Paul will tell you, we uphold the law. What he's telling you is, if you abide in these things and you avoid all the other things which are of the flesh, then the law is not coming against you at all. Do law-abiding citizens look to the law to make sure they're doing the right thing all the time? Or do law-abiding citizens worry about which law they're going to break today? Not really. But it's more likely that a sinner or a lawbreaker, a criminal, will look to the law and examine it, looking for loopholes, looking for ways to get out of it, get out of whatever he's gotten himself into. In fact, whenever the law comes against a person, that's when they become invested in it. But you see, when we live with the clear conscience that's afforded us by the blood shed by Yahusha Messiah, it's not as though we must examine the law to find out where we are going wrong in it. But we rejoice in the law that we have, and we do try to keep. But we rejoice in the liberty that is afforded us by Mashiach, so that we can walk as law-abiding citizens before Yahuwah, being forgiven for those sins we're not aware of, and doing our best to walk upright in his eyes. 2 Timothy 2:22-26 says this, Flee also youthful lusts, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace with those who call on the Master out of a pure heart. But avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, knowing that they generate strife. And a servant of the master must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach, patient, in humility, correcting those who are in opposition, if Elohim perhaps will grant them repentance, so that they may know the truth, and that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. We are equipped with the word of Yahuwah not to go out there and kill our brothers and sisters by making them aware of their sins. Although we should help our brothers and sisters in error, and we should definitely point out the stumbling block or pit that is in their path so that they may avoid it and save their lives. We're not given the word of Yahuwah as a sword to pierce our brothers and sisters. We're to avoid these kind of things. We're to avoid disputes that generate strife. We're not to be quarrelsome, but gentle, teaching and correcting people in humility. The goal is always for people to have repentance granted to them, to escape the snare of the devil, to release the captives. By their fruits you will know them. 2 Timothy 3:1-5 says this. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, profane, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Elohim, having a form of piety, godliness, but denying its power. And from such people, turn away, run away, get away from these kind of people. All these things listed, they are the opposite of the fruits of the Spirit. They despise what is good, even though the fruit of the Spirit is goodness. They are without self-control, even though the fruit of the Spirit is to have self-control. They are unloving, and so on. They oppose the Spirit, even though they have a form of, you could say, set-apartness, righteousness, holiness, godliness, piety, whatever you want to say. They may use all the fancy Yahuwah words and know all the fancy Hebrew lingo. They might even keep the feasts and talk about the necessity of keeping the Sabbath on their day, mind you. But these people are to be avoided. I always warn my little children, those I study with and those that I'm raising, to be even more careful of people who call in the name of Yahuwah, or say the name Yahusha, or have some form of knowledge, because they can be twice as dangerous. 3 John chapter 1 verses 9-12 says this. John speaking. I wrote to the church, the assembly, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, prating against us with malicious words. And not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the assembly. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of Elohim, but he who does evil has not seen Elohim. Demetrius has a good testimony from all, and from the truth itself. And we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. Even in the times where John, Peter, Paul, James, and all the apostles walked the earth, there were ravening wolves that had snuck in amongst the sheep, camouflaged by a form of piety. They looked good on the outside, but inside they were eaten by worms. They caused contentions and striving, separations within the assemblies, even forbidding those who walked with Mashiach from entering in. It also ought to be encouragement to us to be steadfast and strong in our belief, to be able to stand our ground, even being thrown out of assemblies for what is right. No, in the words of Peter, we ought to do good, even if it's injurious to ourselves, when evil comes upon us for doing good, because it is a testimony to Yahuwah. Galatians 6:12-15 says this: As many as desire to make a good showing in the flesh, these would compel you to be circumcised, only that they may not suffer persecution for the cross of Messiah. For not even those who are circumcised keep the law, but they desire to have you circumcised so that they may boast in your flesh. But Elohim forbid that I should boast except in the cross of our Master, Yahusha Messiah, by whom the world has been crucified to me, and I to the world. For in Messiah Yahusha neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails anything, but a new creation. Paul's talking about displays in the flesh. We're not justified by any works we do or any show that we put on, even shows of obedience. And we do delight in the obedience of the Torah. This is a good thing. But it is not buying our salvation at the end of the day. It is a fruit of the Spirit that is brought forth from the salvation which lives in us. It should also serve as encouragement for us not to be judging amongst our brothers and sisters, those who claim the belief in the Messiah, in the one who was hung on the tree, the timber, the cross, the one who in his body has made the two sticks one again. Just as they take the timber of the crossbeam which his hands were fixed to, and they nail it onto another piece of wood. He has joined together the stick of Judah to the stick of Ephraim, which is being gathered from all the nations as we speak. Compelling people to do works so that they may look good in the flesh is unprofitable. And I've learned this myself in the past. Trying to keep festivals for the sake of keeping the festivals and neglecting the weightier matter. When we come into this festive season, we've got the day of shouting, trumpets, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonements, and the much celebrated Feast of Tabernacles, followed by the last great day. A lot of people are going for campouts. A lot of people are enjoying themselves, celebrating. A lot of big assemblies and communities are celebrating. And the desire will come for you to be joined with them. And go ahead. But remember this: if you neglect the weightier matter and you do not look to the spirit of the word when observing these festivities, then you're just going camping. If you blow the shofar on Yom Teruah and you don't know why or for what purpose, and you're not crying out in your heart, then you're like that banging cymbal that Paul describes. You're just making a noise, not a joyful noise, a mindless noise. And I love you all, and I pray your consciences are clear in this festive season, and that you have people to enjoy the times with. But I also pray that you put aside the time to meditate on what these things represent. Imagine how it would have been when our Master was being offered up and he was crying out, "Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing." And people were rushing past, looking upon the spectacle, but in their minds thinking, "I've got to quickly get home before sundown so I can slaughter this lamb." The lamb was being slaughtered in front of them. We need to make sure that we're not too carried away in the observances of the flesh, that we neglect what's truly the substance and the spirit of the matter. Using the law correctly. James chapter 2 is filled with important concepts for us to wrap our head around. In verses 10, 13, and 26, James begins with this: For whoever shall keep the whole law and yet stumble in one point, he is guilty of all. And then he moves towards this. For judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. And he rounds out all these thoughts with this. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Just with these 3 verses, he is sounding a lot like our brother Paul, who gets a bad rap from a lot of people who turn to Torah and can't reconcile the spirit of the word. Just like Peter says, they misinterpret his words as they do the rest of the scriptures to their own destruction. The law is important and yet cannot be kept perfectly in our current state. It's just a fact. And yet judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who is not merciful, and mercy triumphs over judgment. So we see now the law can be merciless, and even those who are law-abiding citizens, as soon as they commit a crime in the eyes of the law, they are persecuted. There's no benefits for good behavior, but yet mercy will triumph over judgment for those who have been merciful to others. A lot of us, myself included in the past, wield the sword of the Spirit, which is the word, too eagerly, swinging it around at our brothers and sisters and anyone who gets in the way. But they don't realize it's a double-edged sword. Everyone you cut will be a cut on you. And what that means is, for everyone you've pursued mercilessly with the word, you'll be held to the same account, because everyone has fallen short of the law. And yet we need to bring forth good works from our faith, from our belief. There's a perfect balance here. The law is necessary to point out sin, and for those unable to keep it, they will be guilty. And yet mercy will be shown to the merciful, but the believer need also do the works. Now we hear from Paul in Romans 3:19 to 23, then verse 27 and 28, and then verse 31. He begins with this. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before Elohim. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. But now the righteousness of Elohim apart from the law is revealed, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of Elohim through belief in Yahusha Messiah to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of Elohim. 27:28 goes on to say, where is boasting then? It is excluded. By what law? Of works? No, but by the law of belief. Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by belief apart from the deeds of the law. And he finishes with this statement. Do we then make void the law through belief? Certainly not. On the contrary, we uphold the law. Both of these brothers are telling the same message. James begins with, whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles with one point, he's guilty of all. And Paul, with the same spirit, continues by saying the law is so that everyone's mouth can be shut up, because everyone's guilty. In fact, just knowing about sin through the law makes you a sinner, because no one is justified in his sight. And he agrees again with James, who says, judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who's not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. But Paul says it this way. Where's boasting? It's excluded. Is there a law of works at play here? No. There's a law of belief. We justified by belief apart from the deeds of the law. If we were justified by deeds of the law, then there'd be a course of boasting and there'd be no room for mercy. But because everyone is equal in the fact that they have sinned, none can boast and everybody needs mercy. James finishes with, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also." And you might say that it's contradictory because Paul says, "A man is justified by belief apart from the deeds of the law." Both statements can be true. We are justified by our belief towards good works. As Paul says, do we then make the law void through our belief? Certainly not. On the contrary, we uphold the law. Our upholding the law is not our justification. It is a product of the justification which comes by belief. And that product, if it's not there, means the belief's not there. Now I'm going to show you some images which may disturb some of you or may trigger some thoughts in you. And that's normal. In fact, when I was selecting these pictures, they triggered certain thoughts in me. But I want you to meditate on them thoughts afterwards. You see here the law of works. And these men, in their conviction towards Elohim, believe they're justified by their works, by keeping the mitzvah, by upholding the Torah, and by studying Torah, that they will be elevated to a higher standard of living and to a greater purpose in the world to come. And here you will see the spirit of error on people in the Christian church. Faith without works, foolishness, the belief that the spirit is some supernatural cosmic force that comes into you and makes you lose all control. Now, on the one hand, you might look at one or both of these parties with hatred or disdain, or they may cause you displeasure. You might be angry for Yahuwah. You might feel as though you're in the Elijah position, where you want to call them out for their deeds. But we're told that all reproof should come from humility. And I can guarantee everyone watching this video, if you really look into yourself, you've fallen into one of these categories at least once in your walk, maybe both. We shouldn't be pointing the finger at them. We should be pointing the finger at ourselves. We should always be mindful of ourselves, working out our own salvation with fear and trembling, and praying for those who we believe are in the error of believing they're justified by works, or this spirit of error which comes by faith without good works. The bottom line is we should be praying for one another. We should be praying that we not fall into any error ourselves. And we ought not think ourselves any better than these people or the people that have come before us or anyone else for that matter. For we're all flesh. And the only reason any of us have election as the sons and daughters of the Most High is because He chose. From the foundation of the earth, you were chosen. And that choice was not yours to make or influence. It was before you were even born, before you were a thought in your Father's mind. And so because there is election, there's no room for boasting, and everything has been done out of mercy. Now we ask where to point the finger. Matthew 24:10-13 tells us this. At that time, and I believe this is that time, many will turn away from the belief and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Now, these aren't just false prophets you see on the internet and YouTube, and I had a dream about this, and if you splash oil on every entrance to your house, you'll keep evil spirits away, and whatever else crazy foolishness you've heard on the internet, because it's out there. You don't need to look hard. And the wickedness and the love growing cold isn't just that of the world learning to hate us for the good works we tried to do, or for the keeping of the Sabbath, or for the putting off of the old works, old holidays, old celebrations, being alienated from our families. Increase of wickedness in this world is also causing the love in us believers to grow cold. I've experienced it. I'm sure all of you have experienced it as well. But we have to remain firm and steadfast until the end. We need to overcome the evil with good. How can you overcome evil with good if you have no love in you? All you see is evil. You stop showing mercy, and you lose the mercy that's supposed to be given to you. Jude chapter 1 verse 8 and 9 tells us this. Likewise, also these dreamers defile the flesh, reject authority, and speak evil of dignitaries. Yet Michael, the archangel, chief messenger, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, Yahuwah rebuke you. Yahuwah rebuke you. I don't rebuke you. Yahuwah rebukes you. He puts it back into the hands of the true judge. He doesn't take it upon himself to be the judge, but he defers to the greater authority. Yes, the devil is a celestial being. He is counted among the sons of Elohim. In fact, it's said that there was no one like him in beauty before iniquity was found in him. He's wiser than Daniel. How can you sit there and speak anything ill of him when Yahuwah himself has placed him in this position? Now, don't mistake my being honest about the matter for some great and newfound respect for the adversary. He is the adversary. In the words of Michael, may Yahuwah rebuke him. He is not for us to worry about. He is not for us to make war against or to come against or to bind. He is for us to resist. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. We should be ever aware of him and yet not concerned with him. His function is not to make you do anything, but to bring out that which is in you and your own wicked desires. None of us can say the devil made me do it. And if even the devil himself is off limits for us, how much more so our brothers and sisters who walk the earth with us, other believers, Christians, Jews, even Muslims who say there's one God and that Isa is the Messiah and he's returning. Aren't these all just an opportunity to speak the blessed word of the gospel, to bear with one another in all humility as we would a family member, trying to convince them, not giving up on them, repaying their rebuke with kindness, bringing forth the fruits of the Spirit and truly imitating our Master? This world is run by some truly evil people, we know this. And yet we know that it's Yahuwah's will that's being done in them, that he causes them to do certain things so that his will can be done, so that his purpose can be achieved. How can we speak on anything when we know so little of the world around us and the Spirit, which we can't even see? Again, the law was given so that all mouths may be shut up. Romans 12:17-21 says this, repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Yahuwah. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in doing so, you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That is the same as saying, you are the light of the world. No one takes a lamp and puts it under a table, but they take the lamp and put it on a lampstand so that its light may shine forth on all. Now, I believe there's been a mistake in the interpretation of heaping fiery coals on someone's head. It makes sense. Love your enemy. but he's my enemy. Ah, but I get to lump fiery coals on his head. That makes sense. It's going to annoy him, me doing good. Or he's going to be punished more severely because I'm good to him. Maybe that's not the way. Let's read Leviticus 16:11-13. It says this, "And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before Yahuwah with his hands, full of sweet incense beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before Yahuwah, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the testimony, the Ark of the Covenant, lest he die." This is the meaning of putting fiery coals on someone's head when you repay them good for evil. You see, we must die to self. The sin offering is for ourself. When we make atonement for ourself, when we die to ourself. Mashiach was our atonement and sin offering, was he not? And yet we are the body of Messiah. And so we must also slaughter ourselves, our pride, and certain aspects of our identity that make us think that no one ought to speak of me in that fashion, or no one should be saying that about me. How dare they? It was done to Messiah. Why shouldn't it be done to you? Once we've died to self, we take this censer full of burning coals of fire, right? The burning coals of fire are going to go on our enemies' heads, aren't they? But what do? Where are we taking that fire from? We're taking it from the altar that's before Yahuwah, where the offerings are made. And we put it together with a handful of sweet incense. If you've done your Bible studies, you'll know that incense is the prayers of the set-apart ones. Well, that makes sense. Doesn't the Master say to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you? Take that sweet incense and put it in to the burning coals from the altar of Yahuwah, and bring it inside the veil, in your heart, to your inner man, your inner being. Put the incense on the fire. Understand that you're as fallen as they are, and mourn for them because they are still ensnared by the devil to do his will. Pray for them, not for them to get the house they want, the car they want, the promotion, a good life, prosperity, whatever. You're not praying for them as they are, the sinner. You're praying for what could be your brother or sister. You're praying for the person Messiah died for. Didn't he die for all of us while we were still in our sins? And in doing so, the fiery coals that we put on their head turn them into an offering to Yahuwah. They become the cloud that covers the mercy seat so that we don't die. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Matthew 5:44-48 tells us this. "But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Tamim, complete. Just as our Father says, I am Kodesh, I am holy, I'm set apart, so you be set apart. What is set apart about doing what the rest of the world does? Only being kind to our family members and having no love for the outsider. paying someone back whenever they do you wrong. Tit for tat. I've got to get him back just as bad as he got me. In fact, I've got to get him back worse so he knows who he's messing with. That's not how a son of the Most High operates, or a daughter. When we think about being sons and daughters of Yahuwah, we need to look at the only begotten Son, the only one-of-a-kind Son of the Father, our Master. What did he say again? When he was dangling on the wood, and they were spitting on him and cursing him, reviling him, making a sport of him, making fun of him, gambling for his garments. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. How often do you say that? How often do any of us say that? Because I speak to myself as much as I speak to you. These are not my words. The next time somebody does evil to you, will that come into your mind first? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. The finger should always be pointed at ourselves. The only place to look is inside of yourself. And in doing so, in your walk, you will help others by leading the way. The Messiah didn't just come to teach and speak the word. He came to lead by example. And that's what we need to do. And to our brothers and sisters who believe, no matter how much you might believe their belief is rotten or of no value or worth, no matter how much you might think the doctrines which are currently misleading them by these false and wicked shepherds in the world, condemning them, how much a name that they use disqualifies them. These are the people that Yahusha bled for. And those who judge without mercy will have no mercy shown to them, even if you're using the law. Because I bet you there's a part of the law you're guilty of breaking. So please, every single time you pick up that word of our Father, use it correctly, use it wisely, use it to heal, not to hurt. Use it as an instrument of love and not condemnation. We are told in the Torah to use even scales, and the measure which you measure out to others will be measured to you. Be mindful of that, my beloved. And that's where I'm going to end this message. So I say one last time in this series, Shalom, Shalom, beloved, brothers, sisters, and friends. May Yahuwah bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you, lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In Yahusha's mighty name. Amen.